class we've done our Photoshop lesson. Now we're doing our Photoshop lab. It's going to be pretty much the same thing, a little bit more complex things we're going to be doing with images. Let me point out that as you're watching this video and doing your work, pause the video until you figure out where the things. I'm going to go through this fairly fast. Pause the video. Figure out what's going on. Replay the video. Don't, you may be able to keep up with me. You may not. If not, pause the video until you've figured out what it is that we're trying to do, and then move on to the next step. So I've sent you a link as to where to download the files that we're going to be using. This is our Photoshop number 2. And so I've downloaded mine to the desktop here. You can see it. So this is our zip file. I'm going to double click it. It's going to expand out to a folder. I'm going to double click that folder, and here is the images that we're going to be using. This is also a PDF of the instructions for this lab. All right, so I'm going to go and I'm going to open up Photoshop. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to just open up all of the images so that we can go through them. So here we go. I'm going to go to, I've got Photoshop open here. So I'm going to say open. I've got mine on the desktop. I'm going to go to the files here. So what I'm going to do is just click and drag down on all of these images. I've got one more. We're going to open that independently. So there we go. I'm going to open those up. You can see that they are opening up. Now I'm going to open up the last 2 images. So I'm going to say here, go to open, go to my Photoshop Kid and Plane. Again, just drag and highlight those 2 and open them up. All right, so I have got 8 images open, but we're going to be turning in 7 images. All right, so let's go down the list. We're going to go here, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go and open up the Canyon photo. We've already been through where all the tools are. If you need to a refresher on that, go back and watch the previous video. So on this image, the Canyon, we need to rotate it and make it black and white. Now the first thing I want you guys to do to get in the habit of doing is creating a background, or creating a copy of this. I'm going to right click on here where it says duplicate layer. And it says, I'm going to duplicate it. Where is it going to go? I'm just going to say, okay, so it's going to make a duplicate here. So you can see I've got 2 copies of that. I'm going to leave my background layer alone. So I always know I can go back to that and reference it, or if I have to, I can start over. So I've got my the duplicate selected. So I'm going to go up here to image because I need to rotate it first. I'm going to go to image rotation, and I'm going to rotate it 90 degrees clockwise. There we go. Now I'm going to do a command minus to zoom out. So here's our image. I have turned it. I have made it vertical, but I need to make it black and white. Now Photoshop and Adobe always likes to give you a number of ways to do things. You can go up here to image and go to adjustments and go to black and white. And you can see that it has turned that layer black and white. You have these controls to where you can play around with the contrasts of the different colors. So you can see that you can play around with that all you want until you get the nice contrast you want. You say okay. But if you look down here in your layers, you have no control. If you decided the contrast of this was not right, you needed to make some more adjustments to that, you can't do that because you have affected this in a more of a destructive way. So I can't do anything else with this one. I have to delete it and start over. But what I want to do is show you how you can then have that control after the fact. So first of all, I'm going to go up here to my history, and I'm going to just go all the way back to duplicate the layer. No, let's use the rotate. So I'm going to go to the So it rotates. So I've got this. So now I did the one way where I went to image adjustments, but what I want to do is an adjustment layer. And adjustment layers in Photoshop and in some of the other Adobe programs are very powerful. So please get used to using them. So I've got my background copy selected. I'm going to go down here to where I have got my half circle, a circle with half black, those are my adjustment layers. So I'm going to click there, and I'm going to go down here to the same thing where it says black and white. Now you can see I've got another layer here. I can turn this on and off, and it's going to affect the layer below it, the layers below it. So I still have the controls. I can still make adjustments to this, and get the contrast and things the way I like them, the way I want them to be. The great thing about it is that once that is done, I can always go back here to my adjustment layer and tweak it some more. So it gives me control after I have already done some adjustments. It allows me to do that. Now, if I turn this layer off, my background layer is being affected. So I want this adjustment layer to only affect the layer right below it. So if I hold down my Option or Alt key, you can see that now my cursor turns into this where it will a box with an arrow pointing down. If I'm on the border between those two layers and I click that, now if I turn this off, this layer is only affecting the layer below it. My background layer, the very bottom, is not being affected. So there you have it. And again, I can click on this and I can make adjustments, all I want. So what I'm going to do now is I'm happy with this. I'm going to save it. The requirement for this assignment is to save it as a Photoshop file, so when I open it, I can see the layers that you have used. So I'm going to go up here to File, Save As, and what I want to do is here's all my files that I'm working with. I'm going to put this someplace where I can remember. So I'm going to go down here to New Folder. I'm going to call it Caster PS2 Lab. So that I'm going to put all of my saved images there so that I can compress this and turn this in at the end. So I'm going to hit Create. There is my folder. Make sure that's highlighted, and I'm going to leave the Canyon the thing. I'm just going to add my last name to it. Whoops, there we go. And hit Save. Now I like to double check to where if something didn't go right, I can immediately, so I'm going to go to my Finder. I'm going to go here are the folders or the files that I'm using. Here is the folder I just created that I'm going to be turning in, and sure enough, there is the Caster Canyon in that. So I'm happy with that. So I'm going to go ahead and close the Canyon image because I'm through with that. Our next image is the golf ball. So I'm going to select that. Here's our golf ball. What we're going to be doing is moving the golf ball from this side, from the left side of the hole, over here to the right side, and then repairing where the golf ball was. Okay, so the first thing we need to do is make a duplicate of our background. So there I went, right-clicked on it and made a duplicate. So now we're going to use a tool called, and it's under the spot healing brush. Here is this Content Aware Move tool. So we're going to give that a go. So what we're going to do is we're going to draw a shape around this and move the golf ball. Now I don't need to isolate the golf ball down to, exactly. I want to keep the area around the golf ball so it will blend in better with the grass and stuff over here. So I'm going to start at the top. And like I said, I don't need to be real loose or real tight. I'm just kind of grabbing, making sure that I've got some area around. Go back up here. It doesn't have to be perfect, but you can see I'm outside of the golf ball and the shadow. You have to remember to take the shadow. So now I'm just going to grab the golf ball and I'm going to move it over here. Now I have to be careful. Look at the depth of field. Look how out of focus it is up here. If I put the golf ball up here, it's not going to look right. If I put it too far down here, it's not going to look right. So I've got to make sure that I stay within the depth of field of the shot. So I'm going to move it about to here. That's looking pretty good. So I am now going to press, click on my check mark here. And there it has moved it. It didn't do a very good job of filling in where the golf ball was. You can still see I have a selection here. I need to get rid of that, so I'm going to hit deselect, go up here to select, deselect. So you can see the golf ball looks pretty good sitting there. I don't really have to do anything to that, but I have to clean this up because it doesn't look right. So there I'm going to use my clone stamp tool. And if you hover above these, let's click on that, hang on a second. So if you hover above any of these, it will tell you what the tool is. So this is our clone stamp tool. So what I'm going to do is clone or copy pixels from over here to cover up here. So in order to do that, I've got my clone stamp tool selected. I'm going to use my Option or Alt key. You can see it turns into a bullseye. I'm going to click here. Now, if I come straight across, you can see that I start painting with what's over, over here. And as long as I stay straight across, it's maintaining my depth of field. So you can see that going through here and I'm going to use my square bracket tool to make my brush a little bigger, so you can see that I have there. Now it doesn't look right, doesn't look perfect, but I'm going to use some other things because you can kind of see some edges around here. So I'm going to use then going to go back up here to where this content aware, but I'm going to use my spot healing brush. I'm going to make this a little smaller. And so you can see the lines that are there. Let me zoom into this just a touch. So you can see the lines there. So now if I go dragging around this, it's going to go through and look and see how can I repair and blend in those backgrounds. And you can see there's a couple of places here where it looks a little darker. So I'm going to just go through here and fix those up. So now I'm going to zoom back out. And you can see that that's looking pretty good. You can tweak this a heck of a lot more, but I am happy with, because when I look at this, first thing I see is the golf ball over here and the hole. So I am happy with that. And you can see as I turn that top layer off, you can see here's where I started here, and this is what I ended up with. So I want to save this off. So I'm going to go up here to File, Save As, make sure the file that I'm saving my corrected images is selected. I'm going to go up here to golf ball. I'm going to put my last name with it and say OK, say save. You guys are going to get tired of seeing this? I like to double check. I don't like to move on unless I know everything is taken care of. So I'm going to go here, look at my folder that I'm saving. Sure enough, there's the golf ball, the canyon, so I'm good there. So I'm happy with the golf ball, so I'm going to close this one out. Our next image is going to be the castle. So let's open up the castle. This is an image I took in Tennessee. It was a foggy morning, so you can see the image doesn't have a lot of contrast to it. And what I want to do is I want to remove the one-way parking resident parking only. I want to move this sign all the way down to the base of it. I'm going to remove this. Then I'm going to also change the contrast of the image. So what's our first thing we do? Going to make a duplicate of the background. So I right click, say duplicate, make a duplicate of the background. This is the background. This is the layer I want to be working on. So the first thing we want to do, I'm going to zoom in. I'm going to zoom into our sign here. And I am going to now I'm going to use over here, I'm going to take pixels from over here and replace over here to cover up our sign. So I'm going to go here to my clone stamp tool. I'm going to start about in here. I'm going to do my option to get that target. Now you can see as I start painting over here, we're covering up with that same texture. And again, all I want to do is I want to get this covered up. Then I'm going to look at my edges, look at the things, where can I go in, and where do I need to tweak it in order to make it look a little better. Okay, so I'm going to keep going down the pole here, and I'm going to go a little bit to the side so it doesn't look. And again, I'm going to be working on my edges. So now I need to replace the sign with the leaves, grass things here. So I'm going to go ahead and do another grab here. Alt, Option key, get my target, click on there. Now I'm going to come over here and I'm going to remove the sign there. This is not looking good. Let me grab this here. There we go. So now I need to remove it out of the sidewalk. Look at this dark area right here on the sidewalk. I want to keep that. I don't want it to be a hole in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab some texture on this side so I can move that dark over there. So let me go back to my clone stamp tool. I'm going to make my brush a little smaller. I'm going to grab about here, do my Alt, Option. Now you can see as I go straight across, just paint around, and you can see how I have changed that up. So I'm going to just kind of touch that up to where it doesn't quite look as there. I'm not happy with that. I've got this little bit down here. People may not notice it, but I like being a perfectionist, so I'm going to grab my texture here and paint over it. So now you can see as I turn my layer on and off, you can see what we've done. Now I've got some places here that don't look very good that it thinks. So I'm going to go to my spot healing brush, and I'm just going to kind of drag around any place that I can see maybe where I had done a line or two. I'm going to go in there and just kind of doctor that up some. So now you can see, now we're right on top of this. Let's do a little bit at the top up here. So we're right on top of this. Let's back up to see our whole image. Now you can see that your eye is not drawn down here. It doesn't look out of the ordinary. So you can see how we have removed that sign. Okay, so that's the first part. Now we want to add some contrast to this image. So we're going to use, if you remember, we used an adjustment layer to make the other one black and white. We're going to use an adjustment layer. This is our adjustment layers here. And I'm going to go down and I'm going to use a curves. You can use level or curves. I like curves. I like the graphic representation it's showing you. So if you look here, here's our curves menu. This is black to white. This is a histogram of our image. You can see the peaks up here of the bright sky. You can see some other things. So you can see that, well, actually, I think this is the sky. This may be our bricks. But anyway, you can see that. So now, what we want to do is add some contrast. So I want to take my darks. This is the dark area. I don't want to take all the way here. I'm going to go up about here at this intersection. I'm going to grab and bring it down. So you can see how it's darkening the image, giving us some more contrast, but our brights are gone. All of our light colors are gone. So I'm going to grab here. This is towards the lights, the whites of the brighter part of the thing. And I'm going to bring up, and I want this kind of gentle S curve happening. So now you can see that as I turn this on and off, you can see that we've added contrast. Now you can play around with this and say, oh boy, let's really give it some contrast, whatever, whatever you think, but the great thing about these adjustment layers is you can adjust them after the fact. All right, so you can see where I have added contrast, and you can see where I've taken out the sign. So there you go. I am happy with this one. So I am going to save this. Going to go down here, do a save as, make sure it's saving into my folder that my finished images are in. It says castle here, so I'm going to put my first name in front of it and say save. And like I said, I like to always go back and double check. Sure enough, there's my castle is saved in there, so I'm good there. So I'm happy with this image. I've saved it. I have done my layers. So now I'm going to close this image out. And our next image is going to be the foosball player. So here is our foosball player. What's our first step? Obviously, to go over here, right click, duplicate the layer. So, okay, so now I've got a layer, I've got the original, and I've got a duplicate. So what we want to do is we want to change the color of the jersey. Now, I could certainly go and get a brush. I can click on here and get a green color. Let's get this. And I can, okay, let me make my brush bigger. And I can start painting. And I could paint all the way through and whatnot, but does this look very natural? No, it's all the same color green. If you look, I'm gonna delete this, or let me just turn this layer off. Look at these subtle differences. You've got some lights and darks, some reflections. You want to keep all that to make the image look realistic. Painting over it, it does not look realistic. So I'm going to get rid of that. Still got my duplicate layer. So what I want to do is isolate the jersey so that I can affect it independently. So I'm going to go up here to my quick selection tool. See, it's also W is the shortcut key. My quick selection tool. And now I just want to kind of drag through the middle of the area that I want to select. Let's zoom in a little bit. So you can see that we've got most of it selected. You can see over here I need to select some more, so I'm just going to kind of drag down here. I want to make sure I have got as much of the red selected as possible. You can see up here I've got some of the collar. So in order to not select that, I'm going to use my Option or Alt key and draw in there and remove that part of my selection. I don't want this looks kind of rusted. I don't want that selected, so I'm going to draw in here with my Alt key. So I'm eliminating, and I went too far there. So I'm not going to Alt key, I'm just going to select up here. Now let me show you a trick. You've got this little button over here, which is your quick mask tool. It's also a Q is the shortcut key, but I'm going to select this. Now it's showing you what you've got selected, and what is not selected. The cool part about this is that you can use your brush and your eraser in this mode to get rid of. Here's a place that I want to get rid of. So let's go to our eraser, and you can see that I'm drawing out of that. Here's a place up here. Let me kind of get rid of that. I'm happy with this. Let's kind of trim that off some. You can see where I've kind of missed the edges here, so I'm going to go to my brush tool. Let's make that a little smaller. So, and I can go through here and try to select a little bit more up here. You can see that I've got, so there, it's not exactly perfect, but what I want you guys to get used to is the tools. So I'm happy with this. I'm going to go back here. I can either hit the Q to toggle back and forth. So now I've got my jersey selected. So what I want to do is now copy the jersey by itself, So I'm on my top layer here. I'm going to go up here to Edit, Copy, or Command C. Then I'm going to immediately do a paste, a Command V. And if you notice, it creates another layer. I can turn this off, and there is my jersey. The jersey is isolated. So I want to change the color of the jersey. I'm going to use a adjustment layer, and I'm going to come down here and do hue and saturation. So I'm going to select that, and you can see that now I've got an adjustment layer, and as I start moving this around, you can see I'm affecting the color. Oh, but wait a minute. Let's say I want to do a green color. And I go, well, wait a minute, it's affecting the color of everything. I only want it to affect the jersey. Remember how we do that? We do it over here in our layers menu. We do an Alt or an Option key, and we want to then select, when that cursor changes to that square with the down arrow, we click that. Now this adjustment layer is only adjusting the layer below it. So if I go here and say, let me change, you can see I'm only changing the color of the jersey. Now something else I can do, if I want to do green, I go, oh boy, that's a little bit too intense a green. I can then play with my saturation, bring that down, play around with how bright or dark it is. So you can play around with that until you get it the way you want. I am not terribly concerned. You can see I still have some edges. There's always a lot more refinement that you can do, but I want you to get used to the tools right now, to creating the layers and using your adjustment layers and that kind of thing. So I am happy with this one. I have changed the color of the jersey. I've used my layers. So, and you can see that if I turn this layer off, you can see that if I turn this off, here's my bottom layer. So there you got it. I'm going to save it off. So I'm going to do a File, Save As, go to my folder that I'm saving everything in. It says foosball. I'm going to put my name by it and say save. I like to double check. Sure enough, there it is. It's saved in my folder. So I'm happy there. Okay, so I'm done with this one. I'm going to close out my foosball player, close that image. So our next one is balloons, the balloons. So if we look at this one, here are two kids with the balloons. We want to make this, leave the balloons in color, turn everything else black and white. So the first thing we do, I'm going to right click, duplicate the layer. So I've got a copy of the layer. So now I want to do the same thing I did with the foosball jersey. I want to isolate these two balloons, copy them and put them on their own layer. So I'm going to go up here to my quick selection tool, and you can watch if I just kind of drag a little bit down in the middle of the red and a little bit down the middle of the blue, they select very easily. So I've got those selected. Going to go to Edit, going to go to Copy or Command C. Then I'm going to do a Paste, Command V. If you look down here in your Layers menu, we now have a layer that is just the balloons. Okay? So now we want to make the background, everything else, black and white. I want to select my background, the copy of my background layer. I'm going to go here and do a adjustment layer and do the black and white. I'm happy with the controls. I don't need to change those or anything, so I'm happy there. But it is adjusting the layer all the way down. I want this black and white layer to only affect my background copy. If you remember how to do that, I hold my Option, Alt key, hover over until that cursor turns to the square with the down pointing arrow and click. So now you can see that if I turn this layer off, because this adjustment layer is only affecting this, if I turn that off, you can see my bottom layer has not been affected. So that one was fairly simple. We are happy with this. We've made the balloons, left them in color, turned the background in black to black and white. So I'm going to save this off and say File, Save As. Make sure I'm going into my folder. Balloons, I'm going to put my first name in front of it. It's saying we're saving it as a Photoshop file, and I hit Save. I like to go back and check. Sure enough, there's the balloons so that I know I'm finished. So I'm going to go ahead and close my balloon layer or balloon image. So now our next image is the litter image. So let's select that one. So what we're going to be doing here is picking up the litter. We're going to be cleaning up this little playground. So first thing we do, let's make a duplicate layer of the background layer. So now we've got our two layers. So we're going to be using the top layer. So what we want to do is get rid of this, of all of the trash. So what we're going to be using for that up here is our spot healing tool, spot healing brush. So you can see that if I go and just paint over the trash, the software is looking around saying, how can I combine the pixels around this to make it look natural? So you can see now I don't want to cover up the little yellow flowers. I just want to do the trash. So that looks like a flower to me there. Here's a piece here. So now I'm just moving from left to right. So I'm going along here, and anything that doesn't look like it's natural, I want to cover up. So I'm just painting over. Now I can make this brush a little bigger for some of these bigger. So I'm using my my square brackets to do that. Now let me show you the benefit of the layers. If I turn this layer on and off, you can see what we have done. All right, so I'm still on this layer. I'm going to finish cleaning up. You can see this does a really good job. Now on some of these bigger ones, I'm going to use my square bracket key. I'm using the left bracket key to make my cursor a little bigger. So you can see just a wonderful job this does to where you cannot tell that you have removed anything. We're going to go through, pick up all the trash. I'm not worried about outside of the fence. I will get some of the stuff that's right next to the fence. Let's clean that up a little bit. There we go. So you can see, and again, I'm going to turn this layer on and off. And you can see how we've removed all of that trash out of there. But it looks totally natural. Now another thing we want to do is look at the trash on the pavement. The great thing about this, I'm going to reduce my brush size a little bit, is that it's looking at the pixels around where you're fixing. So it doesn't matter that this is a different texture than the grass. It's looking at what is around the area that we are cleaning up, and how do we and how does it fix that up? You can do as much as you want. I'm pretty happy with this here. Oh, here's some more stuff right here on the edge. Let's get rid of those. And again, you can see what you have done, what all you've cleaned up by turning the layer on and off. All right, so we've got this. I am happy with this. So let's go ahead and save this off. I'm going to do a File, Save as. Again, we're saving it as a Photoshop to maintain our layers. I'm going to click on the folder that I'm saving everything else. This is the litter. Let me put my first name in front of that, and we're saving it. Again, I like to double check. Sure enough, I've saved off my litter right there. So I'm good. So I'm going to close off. I'm going to close down the litter image. All right, so our last two images we're dealing with, we're going to combine to one image. So we have the kid sitting on the hill, and then we've got this plane. So we're going to take this plane and put it in the sky to where it looks like it's flying over him, and we're going to add a vapor trail to it. All right, so the first thing we need to do is isolate the plane so that we can cut it, we can move it. Now, if you remember how we isolated when we were doing the balloons, how quickly it selected the balloon, the red and the blue of the balloon, you want to look at things when you're selecting and go, what's the easiest thing to select? And in this image, the sky it's a uniform color. The plane has a lot of different colors and values to it. The sky is fairly uniform. So I'm going to select the sky and then show you how then we invert that. So I'm going to go up here to my quick selection tool, and I just start dragging kind of in the middle of the blue. Now you can see that all the sky is selected. There's a few places where the plane was selected as well. We're going to undo, or we're going to go in and deselect those and make sure. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in, do a command plus, and you can see down here that we want to deselect this. So I'm going to use my Alt key and make that a minus to where I can then deselect that part of the plane. Now this plane is going to be shrunk down, so I'm not terribly worried about how we don't have exactly everything on there. But you can see, and I'm going to use my shift bar, turns into to a move tool. So I'm going to come over here. So you can see we still have to get some of the tail end of this engine. So I'm going to do my Alt key. I'm going to go here, Alt key on the back here. I still have, you can see I don't have the tail selected, so I'm just dragging down the middle of this so that the computer, the software, can do the selection. So I am very happy with the plane that's selected, or actually the sky that's selected. So I'm going to go up here to select and say inverse. So now it's the plane that is selected and not the sky. All right, so remember how we would cut and paste our other images, when we'd cut something out? I certainly want to go up here to File, to Copy. So now I've copied this, but I don't want to paste this down in this image. I'm going to go back over here to where the boy is sitting in the field, and I'm on this, so I'm going to go paste here. So you can see now the plane is in there. So now we've got the plane and the boy in the field and the sky, everything combined. They don't look right. The beauty of this is with our different layers, we can affect one thing and not another. So what we want to do is we want to make this plane look like it's higher up in the sky, which would mean make it smaller. So I've got my plane layer selected. I'm going to go up here to Edit and go down here to where it says Free Transform. Select that. Now we've got a box around the plane. So I can grab a corner and start to resize, but whoa, look at this. It's getting all out of whack. I want to keep the same aspect ratio. So as I have this corner selected, I'm going to hit my Shift key. So now you can see that it stays with the same aspect ratio. So we want this to be flying, so I'm going to make it about this size. I'm going to grab the middle here, and I'm going to put it up in the sky. So there we go. I'm happy with that. I think our size is good. I like where it is. If you look at our rule of thirds, we're right in there. So I'm going to go and hit the check mark. So now I have the plane and the boy. One of the things that I forgot to do at the beginning of this was to make a duplicate of the layer of the back layer. Since I'm really not painting or doing anything on this layer, it's not critical, but let's be consistent. So I'm going to go ahead and duplicate our background layer. So now we've got the background layer, our duplicate, we've got our airplane, and then we want to now create a vapor trail. I'm going to create a new layer to create the vapor trail. So I'm going to go down here where this says, this is our new layer menu here, or new layer control, create a new layer. So I'm going to click that. Since I had the background selected, it put the layer above above it. So you can see I can turn this off. If I turn everything off, there's the layer. It is very easy to change the order of the layers by just grabbing them and moving them around. Now, I want to be a little bit more, have a little bit more control. Which one is which one of these is the plane, whatnot. And I want to show you. What we can do is I'm going to double click on that, and I'm going to put boy. I'm going to go to my next layer. This is going to be my vapor trail. And then this one up here is my plane. So you can see if I turn the plane on and off, if I turn the boy, let's turn this one off. So you can see I can name these to make it easier to get to the one I want. Now I want to play with the vapor trail. And so what I want to do is I'm going to go to my brush, and I want to create a trail. I'm on my vapor trail layer, so you can see that there is a vapor trail. And it doesn't look very realistic, it doesn't look very straight, it doesn't look like the right color. So I'm going to undo that. So what I want to do is I want to pick a color for my vapor trail. Now I can certainly just go white, but look at the clouds in this sky, in this image. What if I pick a color in there to make it blend in better with the image? So I'm going to go here. I need to select the boy layer so that I can get these, the colors off of here. I'm going to go over here and set foreground color, and you can see my eyedropper. I can come over here and look in the image. Let's go down here. I like this one. It's a little bit brighter. So I'm going to use the color down here. So I'm picking a color from this image to add to this to make it more realistic. So I'm going to say OK. So now I have got that color. But you can see that, let me undo that because I'm on the wrong layer. Here's my vapor trail layer. So you can see that, I've got this, it's still rather big. So I'm going to use my brackets, and I'm going to scale down. I'm also going to go up here. You can see my hardness is all the way down to 0. I want to make this as soft as possible. So I want to make sure my hardness is at 0. You can see that's still a little big for what I want. So I'm going to undo that, and I'm going to go one thing down. So I like that, that thickness of my vapor trail. It's not soft enough, but we're going to fix that. So let me undo this. All right, so I'm going to zoom in just so that we can get a better look at. So we want this vapor trail going straight from the engine off to the side. Now I can try and draw a straight line. I can't do that very well. Let me show you a trick. So what I'm going to do, make sure I'm on the vapor trail layer. I've got my size and all that done, so I'm going to go behind the plane, and I'm going to click once. Now I'm going to kind of come all the way. I'm not holding down, so I'm going to come down about here. I'm going to hold my Shift key and press again, and you can see it has drawn a straight line. If you're not happy with it, undo it, redo it again, whatever. I am not happy. It's a little high, but I'm okay with that right now. So I'm going to go, I'm on my vapor trail layer. I'm going to go up here to my Move tool, just by clicking it, and now do my down arrow key. Whoops, hang on a second, got to select, there we go. Now I can do my up and down arrow keys and select it where I want. I'm not terribly concerned about it being behind the tail at this point. So I'm going to zoom back out. So there you can see it. I would like that vapor trail to be a little softer. So what I'm going to do is everything, I've got my layers, but I'm going to go up here to Filter, to Blur, and Gaussian blur is a very good blur to use, a good one to start with. Certainly experiment with all these other ones, but I'm going to do a Gaussian blur. And with my preview selected, you can see, even in my image here, you can see how there's really no blur. So let's set it to the blur that you want, the vapor trail you want. This one set at 3, so I'm happy with that. So I'm good with that. So I've used now another tool. And then this is on its own layer. Plane, it's on his own layer. The boy is on his own layer. So there you go. You've got your 3 layers. We've named them. We've created a vapor trail. We've combined 2 images together. So there we go. So now I'm happy with this, so let's save it. So I'm going to do a file, save as. I want to make sure it's in my folder with everything else. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to change it to child plane. Go back to the beginning, put my last name with it. You can see I'm saving it in my folder that everything else is, and I'm going to go save. Got to double check, make sure that everything is in there. I've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 images out of the 8 images we started with. That's what we were trying to do. All right, so we are done with all of this. I'm going to go ahead and close out Photoshop because we're finished with that part of it. So I'm going to quit Photoshop. So now here is our folder that we want to turn in. What we want to do is zip this, compress this folder. You can do this one of 2 ways. I can right click it and say compress, or I can make sure it's highlighted there. I can go up here to file and say compress. So now it is compressing that into a zip file. Okay, now it is compressed into a zip file. This is important, something that you should always do. If you have compressed something, make sure it will uncompress correctly so that when you send it to your boss, your client, your professor to be graded, that they can open it and see what's what. All right, so I'm going to double click on the compressed file, and you can see it is unzipping. Now it's called a Castor PS Lab 2 because there's already something there, but it's showing you all those files are in there. So I always do this because there are times that it will not zip correctly, and you send it to your client or your professor or your boss or whoever, your coworker, and they open it and there's nothing there, and now they're scrambling, how do we get things done? So this is something that's important. Double check that your zip file is a good file. So there it is. It is ready, and then you can go to the link I've sent you to upload this file so that it can be graded. Remember, if I've gone too fast, stop the video. Do the steps. Make sure that you are good with each image before you move on. These are not complicated. You're learning the tools of Photoshop and how to navigate around Photoshop. Your next project, your assignment for this class, or for this part of the class, will be, I will send you a zip file or a link to a zip file, and you will be going through and doing similar things to that we've done here with some other images. If at any point during any of these lessons and labs and assignments you get stuck, please contact me. I can help you through them. We can talk through them. We can do a Zoom, whatever we need to do in order for you to be able to understand these. This is a fast moving class. We've got to get a lot of things done in a short amount of time. So don't fall behind. Keep up with your lessons. Don't wait until the end of the week to do them all. You will get behind. And we have got Photoshop, we've got Audition, we have After Effects, we have Premiere. There's a lot of things we're going to be covering in this class. So please keep up. Let me know if you're having any trouble. We will see you next time.